Welcome to Under the Microscope. I am your host, Jenny Germano. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Today, we are going to be talking about from risk to resilience how cannabis operators can avoid receivership. And before I introduce my guest, I just want to give a little bit about my background. I got my start in the cannabis industry in 2009, working in vertically integrated cannabis operations in Denver, Colorado. And in 2015, I founded my company, ICS Consulting, where I help operators navigate the regulatory challenges across the United States. So let's everyone give a warm welcome to my next guest, Andy Shelley from CannXperts. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. And why don't you go ahead and just give everyone a little bit about your background and when you made the transition over to the cannabis industry?
Yeah, you bet. 9 or 10 years ago, I was actually a law enforcement officer. So I was on the major crimes team in Clackamas County, which is just the county south of Portland, Oregon. And as that career was winding down, I was looking for something new to do. And at that point, Oregon they just voted on legalized cannabis, and they were looking for marijuana inspectors and other positions like that. And so I applied for that and I got that, and I went to work for the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission back in 2016. And after a couple of years, I saw that a lot of the licensees were just struggling to either get the licensing requirements or satisfy the licensing requirements, or there was a lot of issues with getting licenses in, or compliance, mostly compliance. I saw that they were getting in trouble for really small little things that were a normal business would completely not have to do. But in this regulated industry, you really got to follow all these rules. And there's just hundreds and hundreds of rules to know and follow at all times.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about CannXperts.
Yeah, in 2018, I left the commission, and just a leap of faith, I decided to start my own consulting company, and it was just me. At the time, I had a couple of licensees that were pretty interested in hiring me for some different projects. And I was basically fractional licensing person and fractional compliance officer for a few different companies, really enjoying that. And then the word got out, and other people were calling, "Hey, can you help us? Can you help us?" And then 6 or 7 months later, I was working like 16, 18-hour days. I was just like no sleep. And so then I started bringing on people to help, and we're still pretty small. There's 6 of us here at CannXperts, and we have licensing people dedicated to doing all the licensing for our clients. And then we have 2 compliance officers that are running around, and they go out on site to our client locations and they do proactive inspections, or they train employees in compliance. They just do all sorts of things. They just fill in as if they're an employee of our clients as a compliance officer.
Yeah, and I wanted to have you on because obviously you and I, we work in the same lane and we have a lot of overlapping things that we do. But I'm really interested in the receivership piece that you do in your business. And I thought that was interesting, and I'm learning a lot from you about it. And when did you start getting into the receivership side of things?
Yes, so that happened just over a year ago, a year and a couple of months. Some attorneys that I know here in Oregon came to me, and they were talking about these receivership case that they needed somebody to be the receiver on. And I knew a little bit about receiverships in that there was a retail store here in Oregon that went into receivership, and the receiver of that store gave us a call. He was a good receiver, but he didn't understand the cannabis industry at all. So he needed to hire consultants to help make sure that he didn't violate any rules or regulations and stuff. So he hired our company to help him out in that receivership. Yeah, about 12, 14 months ago or so is when some attorneys contacted me and they wanted me to be the receiver on their case. And now I have 3 of them ongoing, 3 receiverships that I'm working on right now. I had a 4th one that kind of started and then stopped, but I have 3 of them that have been going almost a year.
Wow. Yeah, I just find it really interesting. That's why I wanted to cover this topic, and I couldn't think of a better person to have on to help me tackle this topic. And so we're going to go ahead and dive in. I think this will be helpful because I think maybe there might be some misconceptions out there about what is receivership. And why don't you go ahead and explain to people like what receivership is? Because I know it's similar, I guess, a comparison to like bankruptcy, but in the cannabis industry, operators cannot file bankruptcy. If you can give a little background on how it works in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, that's the easy parallel. It is a little bit like bankruptcy or a lot like bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is a federal process and it's handled in federal courts. And of course, cannabis at the federal level is still, or at least marijuana at the federal level, is still legal. Very difficult, if not impossible, to file for bankruptcy. Receiverships is a state statute. Every state has a receivership statute. It's very similar in that a company can go into receivership and it's ran through the courts, typically the circuit court, and it allows for some protections for the company as they either reorganize or liquidate assets in order to pay back creditors, things like that.
Who initiates receivership?
Yeah, typically, and I'll reference the ones that I'm doing right now, but typically it's going to be like a secured creditor or lender to the company, somebody they borrowed some money from. You might get a judgment creditor. So maybe you haven't paid a vendor or something and they went and got a judgment against your company. They could potentially file to have a receiver installed to take over the company. I've had the secured creditor. I have one of those going right now on a loan that didn't get paid back. And so the creditor put the company into receivership and now I'm in charge of it. Another pretty frequent one is business partners. They're getting upset over not being a part of the business or not getting true financials or updates. They can file to put a company that they own into receivership. Lastly, there is a way that a company itself, even without, I guess, without a secured creditor making it happen or a mad business partner, they can effectively put themselves into receivership. It's probably less of something that you see, but I do have one of those going right now as well.
Is it something that they work with an attorney to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So in that case, they might be hearing about potential lawsuits coming their way, or they need some protection from the court while they liquidate and sell off assets, or potentially protection from the court while they reorganize their company to be profitable. In all these cases, there's typically this matter of insolvency, like they're having trouble paying bills, they are unable to pay vendors, employees, landlords, whatever. So they're in this case, or at least between a partner to partner dispute, it's that one partner isn't able to verify what their company is doing. They're not getting access to financials or what's going on the day to day.
I'm assuming that this is like the worst case scenario that the partner has tried to communicate and ask for these things. This seems like this would be, it's far gone now. We have to get past mediation, I would assume, that they then go into ask for receivership help.
Yeah, this is exactly how you said it. This is an extreme. This is the end. We've tried mediation. We've tried all these things to resolve this, and it's just not getting resolved. And a receiver is like a third party, disinterested party gets stuck in here to try to work this out, try to reorganize the business, or just liquidate it and start paying people off.
I was wondering, like, what are the top 3 reasons that cannabis operations actually end up in receivership?
Yeah, similar to the last, typically they're unable to pay off loans that they've taken out. And so now that creditor is going to put them into receivership, more than likely to sell everything off so they can recoup some of the money that they're out. You get investor partner disputes. That would be number one and number two, and then lawsuits or perceived lawsuits against the company.
Can banks go after cannabis companies and put them in receivership?
Yeah, you'll see banks do it. Another one too is to keep an eye out for is like taxing authorities. Your Department of Revenue can put companies into receivership. So if you're not paying your taxes on, if you've gotten behind on your taxes or just have this huge bill, they can actually initiate, government entities can put a company into receivership.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I think probably a lot of people didn't realize they could put their own company into receivership. Can people put their company in for protection and then pull them back out? Kind of
Yeah.
trying, is that cheating the system? Solely doing it to protect from lawsuits and then with the intention of coming back out of it.
Yeah, they technically can and do. In bankruptcy, it's a similar thing where they get this protection from the court. It's generally a pretty public thing. You hear about companies, they literally they declare bankruptcy, right? So they put themselves into bankruptcy. Somebody else doesn't put them into bankruptcy. And that's to reorganize, liquidate assets, and to hopefully come out the other end much stronger, able to pay their bills, etc. In a receivership, so the part you're talking about is like the bankruptcy where they're like putting themselves into receivership and to hopefully stay off lawsuits or angry creditors, etc. Work through some reorganization of the company and then to come out the other side much healthier. And typically there's a lot of negotiating going on from the receiver standpoint with the people that could be suing them. We're trying to convey that, hey, we're restructuring, we're going to come out the other end. We're going to try to make good on what we owe, or let's make some deals so that we're not staring down a lawsuit when they come back out.
Yeah. And are there a lot of companies you think that are in receivership right now? I know you're in the state of Oregon. Is it something that we're starting to see a lot more receivership happening in the cannabis industry in general?
We're starting to see it more. I know of 4 in Oregon, and there could be more, but I know of 4, 3 of them are mine. And we're starting to see it I've heard of a few in California recently. I know Michigan has had a couple there. It seems to be, I would say, I see it in states that aren't brand new, like in Ohio or something that just kicked off licensing and operations within the last year or so. But maybe once you get 3 or 4 years in, most of the time companies they get that bump when a state is brand new and everything's great and puppies and rainbows and everybody's making money. But we've seen it, right? We've seen the cycle of this kind of boom and bust. And so in the beginning, it's newlyweds, everything's fantastic, but you get 3, 4, 5 years in, then the cracks start showing up. And that's when I think you start seeing more of these receiverships.
Yeah, the honeymoon is over, basically. And
well, it's worth noting that if somebody borrowed a bunch of money to get going in year 1, typically it's going to be like year 3, year 4, year 5 that those lenders are going to want to see a return on their investment. And if you're not paying them what you told them you were going to pay them, now we're going to start seeing more receiverships.
That makes sense. It's happening in the more mature markets rather than the new emerging market. But it's actually good information for any of the listeners that have taken out loans and are working with lenders or investors in these new markets to understand receivership. We'll eventually start seeing it happen in New Jersey and New York, and we're seeing it in Michigan. We'll start to see it in Missouri, although I haven't heard of anything in Missouri quite yet. In these newer markets, I think once you start getting to that year 3, 4, 5, when the investors are like, where's the money? Where's all the information? Where's the communication? And like you said, the cracks start showing themselves. And And that makes a lot of sense. Can you explain and go over everything? What happens when I'm in a receivership if I'm an operator and whether I'm small, medium to large to an MSO or a single state operator? What happens to me while I'm in receivership? What happens to the business and all the moving pieces?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of factors. The first thing you got to figure out, at least from my point of view, when I get plugged into one of these companies is, can we continue operating, or is this thing just completely off the rails? There's no money to pay employees, or we're 3 months behind on the rent, these types of things that you have to figure out pretty quickly. And I've actually seen those things to where it's, oh no, we need to get out of this leads. I need you to sell off everything. We're not going to operate another month. Whereas, like on other ones, they're up and running and they are making enough money to sustain operations, if not for maybe a large loan that they took out that they just can't repay. That's another case that I'm working on right now. Small companies, I don't think there's a size of company where it doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen less or more. Small companies have their issues or cash reserves, typically depending on owner capital, the owner
Hmm.
themselves putting money into this thing. Thin margins where they're unable to weather down markets, they're unable to sell their products. Medium companies, they're typically on the move. They have some rapid growth without really good systems and controls into place. It's kind of like we're going to build the car as we drive it. And
Yeah.
a lot of people do that, but without those controls into place, especially on the finances, then you can find yourself not knowing how much you're spending, taking out loans that you're going to have a really hard time repaying, those types of things. And then the MSOs, their problems are going to arise with, now we're in all of these states. We have different regulatory things that we got to satisfy, different rules, regulations, a lot more employees. It's just if you've taken investment money, now you have investors are expecting a lot more from you. So those types of things lead to issues that they might end up in receivership.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Also, too, for the operating part. So if I'm a grow, we have living plants, right? That's something different than a dispensary where it's brick and mortar and I have the public coming and I can just shut the doors, right? And I can put the product in the vault and you can figure out what you're going to do with that product if you have to destroy it or if you're able to sell the license with the product. And obviously, there's a lot of factors if the product expired and all those things. But what about the cultivation piece and the living plants? Do they just neglect the plants, or does somebody come in and take care of the plants to keep them alive and keep the cycle going until you can figure out, are we going to harvest this? Are we going to sell it?
Yeah, fantastic question. And actually, the first receivership that I was appointed to, it had actually that. It happened last July 2024. And so I was appointed receiver in a Southern Oregon outdoor farm. The first day I showed up, I'm like, I don't know, there's 4,000 plants in the ground and they're all
Oh, wow.
about 3 or 4 feet high. And in Southern Oregon, they get to be the size of small apple trees. It's like the
Yeah.
perfect growing. So I had no money because one of the partners had basically escaped with all the cash. And I was like, I think we have some value here. Obviously, I have 3 or 4,000 plants. If I can get them through to harvest in September, then I'm going to be able to sell it on the market and recapture that money for the creditors. But I had no money to hire people, and I don't know how to grow plants, especially 3,000 of them. So I had to start negotiating. I knew some people that were nearby this grow. I actually knew them from just being in the industry a while. And the first thing, I had them come out and I'm like, what do I even have here? Because I could just plow this under right now and move on with the next phase of this. And they were able to give me some valuation to the crop. And it seemed like it was definitely worth saving and trying to get through to harvest. And so I had to negotiate with them. I have no money. If you're willing to take care of these things, water them, feed them, do all the things that need to get done between now and September, then I will split the harvest with you. You can have 50% of it, and I'll take 50 for the estate. So that's just a novel solution to a huge problem with a lot of plants and no money basically to pay anybody. And they loved it. They're like, yeah, we got a couple of guys. We'll have them come over every day, check everything, and then we'll just harvest it right along about the same time we're doing our. That worked out pretty well.
With receivership, are there any specific rules around inventory? Because we have a regulated inventory, right? That has to be part of the regulated seed to sale system. We've got the state involved, we got regulators involved, and then we have the receivership, which is court appointed. For example, what about inventory in final form, like already tested? So, like the things that you do see in the dispensary, is that salvageable, or the regulators, are they like, you have to destroy it? You can't resell that or try to get any money from that to pay off the creditors that are waiting to get the money out of the receivership.
Yeah, I think that the important answer to this is just because you're in receivership or just because this is the courts are overseeing this, it does not allow for the receiver or any of their professionals to break any sort of laws or rules. It's so important that we have to go along with whatever the regulating authority is over this thing. And I think that's why when I got brought in, it was a much easier because I'm just a compliance geek at heart. And I know a lot of people and I know about grows and retail stores and everything else. So when being in charge of one of these, it's okay, I got to follow the rules. I know exactly what I can and can't do. And yeah, I have to follow just like the business owner themselves, or even better in this case, I have to follow all the rules and regulations, just like a licensee would. Even though I'm not a licensee, the state has granted me temporary authority to operate the licenses or the business as if I am the licensee. So anything I do wrong, it could jeopardize the entire receivership. So it's really important to be plugged in and know what you're doing.
That's good to highlight. And I'm assuming the regulators get notified that license is in receivership.
They know because as the receiver, I'm supposed to tell them. And
Yeah.
so it's one of the first things I do when I get the document for that the judge has signed that now you're the receiver. I go ahead and I forward that to the state regulatory folks, let them know that I'm going to be operating the farm or the retail stores or whatever it may be. Typically, I'm going to limit the access to the actual owners from being able to do anything with the licenses because I just don't want any funkiness to happen. I take over control if they have track and trace like Metric or BioTrack. I'll take over that so that they can't go mess around with things. If they have bank accounts, I'm talking to their banks and letting them know that now I'm in charge of the accounts and things like that. Because it's really important to get a hold of the money and to make sure that you have eyes on the money at all times, because that's where things are going to get a little funky with these folks.
I would think assets too. Wouldn't you have to change the locks on the building that nobody's sneaking in trying to sell off really expensive equipment, things of higher value, or things that are in the safe?
Yeah, absolutely. On like back on that first one, the farm in Southern Oregon, I spent the first day walking around, the first time I'd ever even been there. And it was 20 acres, but the grow itself was on 2.5 acres or so. But there were tractors and shipping containers
Oh
full
my
of
gosh.
equipment. There was rattlesnakes too.
Rattlesnakes in Oregon? I didn't know that. I thought it was more like Colorado. There's rattlesnakes.
Yeah, there's the rattlesnakes there. There was a lot of equipment. There was, like I said, a John Deere tractor that was worth about $80,000. So that's all assets of the company, and it becomes assets of the estate of the company. And that's what I'm protecting is the estate. And I'm trying to build what the value into the estate. And so, yeah, I'm like documenting everything that's possibly part of the estate and maybe some things that aren't. If somebody owns their own vehicle or whatever, and it's personally owned, but I'm typically checking that. Okay, can I check
Yeah.
the registration on this or the title? I want to make sure it's not a company rig, that this is actually yours. If it's paid for with company money, then it's a company car, and that might be something that I'm going to sell, or at least that I'm going to take control of.
I find it fascinating, all the different things that happen in receivership, and I'm always wondering, like, how do they keep the business going? And also the regulatory aspect and all the rules and the regulations and the seed to sale tracking. How are all those moving pieces happening? What are some of the early warning signs that people can look out for that they could potentially start to get on that path where they could get into a situation? This is the end resort of something happening in your business. We don't want people to go in receivership, which is why we're doing this podcast today and why I had you come on and do this topic, because I don't want to see companies, especially these smaller companies and these medium-sized operators, to go into receivership.
Yeah, there is a lot to know. One of the good things is that I have a team in CannXperts behind me. So I have a metric expert and two compliance officers and licensing people. So they actually help out a lot with the receiverships.
Yeah.
I still have to renew licenses. I still have to have inspections by the state, all these types of things. And so they help out immensely with all those types of things. And it also helps save the estate money in the long term, that I'm not running out there all the time to do things. Just some I wanted to throw in there. I'm not doing everything. I do have a lot of help. Warning signs, I would say that payroll, people aren't getting paid, or their paychecks are bouncing, those types of things. Vendors aren't getting paid. They're starting to get a little mad that it's been 60, 90, 120 days, whatever. And it's like, hey, we need our money. If you're an operator, you're putting things on your credit card, or you're
Yeah.
moving money from here to there this month in order to do this. It's the rob Peter to pay Paul situation it's like, this is a very slippery slope now, relying on taking out a loan that's going to be really high interest just to get you by this month. And then next month, I just know is going to be better. Your bookkeeping, your accounting just doesn't make sense, or you've gone in and done some funky things. It's definitely a sign, something that I've seen myself. Regulatory citations, suspensions, they're investigating your company. It's a pretty good sign that something's going on, that you're missing some things. You're not able to keep up on tax payments, corporate tax, sales tax. If you have that in your state, you're scrambling to pay these types of bills. Your landlord's mad because you're 2-3 months behind.
Yeah.
Or the other, and a big one, you're starting to hear the word lawsuit, or I'm going to sue you. And this could be coming
Yeah.
from an employee, or particularly a vendor, or something like, hey, 6 months is too long. You should have paid me. I'm going to call my lawyer. I'm going to sue you. It's okay. Huge red flag. If you got hit with lightning, that's probably the bigger one.
Non-payment seems to be very common in the industry, and I see other operators complaining about it a lot, and I see the chatter is really, "I'm gonna have to sue them. I'm gonna have to sue
Yeah.
them." That's the next step. It's been a year I've been trying to collect, and I see people trying to collect 70 to $100,000 on some of these places, and it's killing their business. They have no choice, they have to go after them, and that can be challenging. And yeah, that's a pretty good list. Is it a culmination of all these things on top of other things, why it ends up in receivership?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of really passionate and smart folks in our industry. And I know you and I talk about it, and the people that we work with and work for. However, it is a business, and you're going to have bills that you have to pay, and you're going to have employees that are helping you, and maybe car loans or tractor loans or whatever. And most people are going to have landlords and rents and insurance too that you're supposed to be paying. And so some people get this. Yeah, I've seen it. I know you have too, almost like a head in the sand type of thing. It's bad. I know it's bad, but I'm just going to work harder, and I'm going to work my way out of this. And a lot of the times, just ignoring the signs is probably the worst thing you could do.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
would be a lot better to ask for help, to call in somebody that you respect, a mentor, something to take a look at what you got going
Yeah.
on and what might be making this downward trend happen.
I call it the phone a friend. Basically, the lifeline. I need someone to talk to because this is getting serious. The next piece I want to talk about is what are the proactive steps that people can take before it's too late?
Yeah, engaging with a mentor or a business coach might be good. Even somebody who does receiverships has seen the warning signs. That might be fantastic to get a receiver in there, just not court appointed. Hey, we need help before we end up here. Your attorney, your compliance people, those types of things. You definitely need to get a handle on your monthly accounting and cash flow. And if that's not your thing, talk to somebody that's a bookkeeper. You probably know somebody in your circle that can come take a look. And even if you just say, hey, I'm going to be humble and I'm just going to tell you, I don't understand what the heck I'm looking at. And I need you to tell me what's going on here because I'm missing something. Get a handle on your cash and especially forecasting. Am I going to be able to maintain this a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now? Or am I just running out of gas and it's just going to go quicker and quicker?
Mhm.
Talk to the people, talk to your vendors, lenders, let them know, hey, I might have a problem, but I'm actively working on it. I think it's worse to not give information, to hide it,
Mhm.
everything's okay. Just I would say be transparent. Hey, we've stumbled a little bit and we're going to work on fixing this. I might be a little late on this payment or whatever. I just want you to know that I'm going to fix this.
I was going to say just really quick on the last one that you shared. I really do think that's important. For some people, it is scary to have to go and have that conversation. But at the end of the day, I would much rather have that scary and vulnerable conversation than having it all be over and then screw everyone over, including myself, and hurting vendors and relationships and my employees and ruining the business. I would go in there and be like, we're having some issues and be clear and be open and share that information with the investors. I think too, a lot of times people think, oh, if I go tell the lenders or I go tell the investors, they're going to pull the plug. But I feel like they would much rather have the business not go under than you not say anything at all.
Yeah, scary conversation, sure, but it's going to be an honest conversation. And I think most people are going to respect that. The worst thing you can do is when I think of vendors who are not getting paid, now they're getting ghosted. Now they've sent 20 emails, they've left voicemails. It's the not knowing that's even worse. And now there's a level of now I'm pissed off. So I'm going to call my attorney and I'm going to sue these guys. If they're not going to answer their phone for me, then they're definitely going to, when they get served with papers, they're going to answer. And this goes for lenders as well. So I think it's the honest thing to do and just start it with, hey, I have a difficult conversation I need to have
Yeah.
with you, but I'm going to be honest with you. We don't have money right now, but I'm doing these things and I'm hoping to be able to make you whole next month or to be able to pay you this much this month and then over the next couple months. And I appreciate the business that we've done together. And I just hope that you can, if somebody came to me like that, I'd be like, hey, great, not a problem. But if I'm trying to call you to collect and you're not answering now, I'm starting to get a little upset. And that's what you want to try to avoid. So have an open, early conversation on what's going on.
Yeah, that's really helpful too. And you can adjust the payments or the payment plan or getting on a scheduled payment plan. I think the one thing that pisses vendors off the most is the ghosting and the not responding and the non communication. I know that's how some of these operators feel. They just want to understand what's going on, when can I expect it? Because that other business, they have their staff that they have to pay and they have to keep their business up and going. And it becomes this domino effect in the industry, and so I think those are some really good pointers. I know we talked a little bit about, you mentioned putting your head in the sand, but I kind of want to dive into that a little bit deeper. How does putting your head in the sand create the igniter to basically blowing up your business?
Yeah. And for all the things we've already said, I think most people It's hard for anybody to admit, like, hey, this is failing or potentially failing. You're like clinging to this optimism that it's going to be better. I just know it as soon as this happens, or if I just have a couple more months, it's going to be great. And it may, but it may not. And so that's where it ignites this thing that's going to quickly get out of control. And like we said, again, refusing to communicate with people. You're a professional, you're running a business now. I think you gain a ton of credibility by calling people up, and they've probably gone through some hard times too, right? And
Yeah.
if you had any sort of relationship with them, hey, things are tough right now, but it's a priority to get you paid back up. I just need a little bit of time. That goes a long way with me. And then, yeah, I think that's the thing. Talk to your partners. If you are feuding with your partner, which I've seen now hundreds of times, family members are no longer talking. They've started this
Yeah.
cannabis company, or best friends are no longer talking. Find some way to be like, man, we have got to talk, even if we get a mutual friend or something. Let's like sit down, because this is just going downhill really quick. And we need to be able to chat about our company and make some decisions on what to do. Don't just ignore it. Don't put your head in the sand and just hope that, oh, tomorrow there's going to be some grand answer that's going to solve all these problems, because there probably isn't. And
Yeah.
you need to start facing these things head on.
I would like to throw this other piece in there. I know that you and I talked about it briefly in conversation, and I think this fits into the putting my head in the sand category. And this happens in a lot of states that they allow this, where they allow a management service company to come in and run their business. And what can happen is, let's say that owner of that license is not paying attention to what that management service company is doing with their regulated business, and they're putting their head in the sand thinking everything's okay. I've got this professional, licensed, approved management service company running my regulated cannabis business, and I'm focusing on other businesses and I have a bunch of things going on. But so this can get a little tricky, right? Because things can happen that they're not paying attention to that's happening in the management services side of things that could put that business at risk, and I know we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, you and I both have seen these things, and since the beginning, I've seen these, and it it seemingly is going to be great. I know that if I was going to hire a company to come take over my operations and split profits, or however we're going to do this, I am going to be watching them like a hawk, and I'm going to have controls in place to make sure that the bills are getting paid and they're not funneling things out the back door. And I think you and I both, I know we have quite a few of these where they've actually hired us to, I want you to watch them like a hawk.
Yeah.
And we're in their metric, we're in their, maybe in their accounting system. We're definitely dropping by on maybe not a schedule, but we're popping in and seeing what's going on. So we're keeping an eye on them, and just to make sure, because now we're helping to protect the owner of the business, or the licensee, or the landlord, or whoever they might be. And yeah, I think just to, oh, I signed this thing with these guys and they seem pretty legit, and now I'm going to go off to live in Florida or something. It's like probably not a good idea. The things that they can do to your property, your building, your license. I've had an attorney that was a hands-off licensee, hired somebody in huge trouble. You have to watch it, because you can get into trouble
Yeah.
even though you're not hands on. You can lose your property, your real estate. Those things can get tied up into court for years, that you're not collecting any rent on real estate property. If you're going to get into one of these things, make sure that you have, either you're watching it like a hawk, or you're paying somebody else to watch it like a hawk, or you're making those people pay the people to watch you to watch them like a hawk.
It's actually true. I actually had an audit where the owner required in the management service contract that they put together, they required that they get, like, quarterly audits, and so then they brought me in as the auditing company, and then that report got submitted to the owner of the license, essentially the landlord, because it was their property as well. and that they were running the operation, and I'm not sure how they were splitting it up or anything like that. I think it is important to have that due diligence and to not put your head in the sand. If there is a management company, you could end up in receivership because that management company ran your facility in the ground. You cannot sit there and say, "Oh, they're approved or they're licensed. I can trust them. I can just throw it into the wind. They'll take care of everything and I'll never have to think about my business again." That's a very dangerous mindset. Both sides have to have responsibility in making sure that they're following all these things correctly and compliant. So it's really a big piece. What type of businesses are at risk of receivership? Now, this is the piece that I was actually amazed at because I will have to say, in my mind and what I've seen online and in the articles and the press out there, I always thought that receivership was just for MSOs. I would just see it out there and I thought, oh, another MSO is getting taken down or going out of business. And now they've got receiverships.
Yeah, no, it's any company, as long as you have enough assets to afford the receivership, it does cost. There's attorneys involved, the receivers involved, and nobody's volunteering their time. I told you I have 3 going on right now, and neither of those 3 are MSOs. So they're all in Oregon. One of them was vertically integrated. They had 11 licenses and they were full vertical. But the other 2 had 2 licenses each. So they were pretty small. One a farm, one a distribution, but they're fairly small. And so there have been MSOs, obviously, bigger ones in the news that are in receivership. But yeah, it's not necessarily big companies. It can be small ones.
Yeah. And I wanted to have this piece in here. That was so important because I think a lot of people have the assumption that it's just big companies and a 2 license operation, that's nothing. That's a vertical. That's a dispensary and a cultivation facility or a cultivation and a manufacturing facility. It's not That's not a large company, and so it can really happen to any size business. And my other question too is, can a company get out of receivership?
Yeah, you can. I just got out of one myself. I got the 4th one that was assigned to me was a creditor dispute. The loan money wasn't getting paid back. The company went into receivership. And then as I was coming on board to this whole thing, they had settled and they'd figured out that who's going to pay who. And it got to a point where it just didn't, at this point now, there's not really this conflict to go in and try to resolve. And so I just filed a motion just to release myself from that company. But in other cases, yeah, you can go in, you can restructure, you can get rid of some bad debt or renegotiate some bad debt. You can negotiate vendor payoffs or landlord, these types of things. And you can come out of it the other side, a more healthy company. And then at that point, the receiver is no longer needed. And you're released back to the wild on your own and hopefully at that point, the receiver's been able to put systems into place and to
Yeah.
streamline some things and do some things. Now you might be a little smaller. Maybe you've sold off some stuff that really wasn't creating revenue, but now you're healthier. Now you can go back to doing what you do and you're just a better company. And yeah, and
Yeah.
then you can get out of receivership.
My next question was why restructuring and going lean can be a positive thing. And I know you just mentioned a couple things. I just want to make sure there wasn't anything that we left out because some of the things that you did list were actually really positive attributes. And if there's anything else you want to add on why that restructuring is a good thing.
Now we're talking about now your company is in receivership, whether you put yourself there or somebody else did. And if you're a put your head in the sand type of person, you are going to have financial clarity now because the receiver is going to go in and examine these books and be like, why are we doing this? Or why does this cost so much? So you are going to have a pretty good idea what's going on financially. A lot of the times we're going to remove things that aren't needed. And that might be employees or redo job titles or something to make things more efficient. A lot of that bloat and inefficiency might go away.
Yeah.
Maybe you were just too scared to I need to let this person go.
Yeah.
We're gonna see that with fresh eyes and be like, let's streamline a little bit more. Typically, it resets the relationship that you have with creditors and investors and stuff because the receivers now talk to them and here's the plan to move forward and then to come out of this thing. Obviously, we're there to protect the licenses and the value of the estate as much as possible. We're not going to do things that are going to cost the estate, or at least we shouldn't be. And I guess it's just like this path to coming out the other side much better.
Yeah. A better understanding of your numbers and like your burn rate, and obviously removing all the redundancy in the business that you just didn't need. All that, like you said, that getting rid of the bloat and the inefficiencies. I think that's really helpful. And in wrapping up, what are some best practices that you can leave operators with, or even new operators that are entering the market?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head in the sand thing. Definitely a
Yeah.
huge piece of this. Don't ignore the red flags, the signs. You're probably feeling it. You're under a lot of stress. It might not get better, especially if things don't change. It's probably not going to get better. New operators, I always tell people like this is a grind. It is a grind. It's a new industry. It's going through its growing pains. It's some months are going to be great and other months are going to drive you crazy and you're going to work long hours. Don't think that this is I'm going to get my license and I'm going to be the best grower in the world or have the best dispensary and I'm going to be a millionaire at the end of the year. It's a grind and you got to be ready for it. And if you're passionate about it, if you're not, the other thing is too, you could be the best grower in the world or great at running retail
Yep.
stores. If business or accounting or things like that are just not in your wheelhouse, hire people to help you because those are extremely important that, somebody else on your team, even if it's a contractor, kind of understands these things. If you have somebody that's really good at accounting, that's keeping an eye on your cash flow and your money and can tell you, hey, at this rate, you're going to be completely out of money in a month and a half. That's what you need. So make sure that you have help and some people that are looking out for your best interests. But it is going to be a grind, and just be ready for it. It's gonna take a few years.
Yeah. And I think too, I think a lot of times people think the grind is winning the application, um, or the launch to get open. And I know sometimes launching a business can feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. But then also, now you have the journey of operating and all the things, and it can be nonstop. I know a lot of people who are operating when it's nonstop all day long, and I've had people say, "Gosh, I wish somebody would have told me that it was gonna be this way." And it's almost like you're in shock, like your first year, because 'cause you're like, "Holy cow, I had no idea it was gonna be like this," or I was gonna be working 70 hours, 80 hours a week, and, all the fires that you're putting out and running it. I know business owners are running around like crazy between just needing change at the bank and things that they're missing and having to keep ordering more product and more inventory and then having to expand and market to new customers. So it is a grind, and it's easy to be so focused about what's happening in the business that you neglect the on the business, which is, hey, I got to be watching my finances and I have to be, how am I managing my business appropriately? And then to not get yourself in this situation. So hopefully this episode was helpful for somebody who is already existing in a mature market, and also really helpful for maybe somebody in a new emerging market, or just somebody who's thinking about opening up in their state when they open up, just to understand some of these pitfalls and things that can happen in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of us, you and I, we have been in this thing a long time. So I think we've seen a lot of things and know what's going on. Yeah, I hope it was helpful and people can reach out to me if they got any crazy burning questions.
No, that's really great. And I want to thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you coming on. I was looking forward to doing this with you. And I will have Andy's information posted in the description for this episode. You can check out my YouTube channel, which is at Under the Microscope with Jenny, and subscribe. or wherever you listen, such as Apple or Spotify or iHeartRadio. But thanks again, Andy. I really appreciate you being here and sharing this knowledge.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. I totally appreciate it. It's great seeing you.
Everyone, take care and thanks for listening.